You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where Reyna brings together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and truth. So many times it's easy to become discouraged in your own pursuit of health because your story or circumstances look drastically different from your favorite influencer or even the expectations you had for yourself. If that is you, welcome! This space is for you to learn, breathe, and maybe just listen and see what wellness could look like for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. On today's episode, it's just me behind the mic chatting with you about all things motherhood. I've been wanting to do a little bit of a chill episode like this for a while, but I wasn't really sure how to kick it off. And of course, I'm feeling a little bit more sentimental with my son's 3rd birthday around the corner. So finally, I felt like it was a fitting time to unpack a little bit of my own personal journey into motherhood, as well as some of the things I've learned along the way, good, bad, and otherwise. And I wanted to share some of the things that you, my community, had to say about your motherhood wisdom and all your experiences. So let's dive in straight to how we found out we were pregnant. My entrance into motherhood was loosely planned, and loosely as in not a total surprise because we were intentionally trying for a family, but surprising in the way that we were both told we would not have kids anytime soon, and it would be a very difficult process. Joseph, on one hand, had just returned from rigorous Army training through Ranger School, and he was dead inside. You can actually ask him about this because we had a full conversation with those words explicitly. So he was down for the count, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all the things, and I wasn't too much better on the other hand because I was told in high school that I had PCOS and had been struggling with that diagnosis for several years. And because it was the middle of COVID, we really couldn't get any answers. So by the time Joseph got home and was relatively settled, we were finally able to snag an appointment with an infertility specialist, which in reality we did not qualify for, but with Army healthcare, sometimes you just take what you can get. So we were walking into this appointment already a little unsettled. Unfortunately, I had taken a pregnancy test the day before and it was negative. So we had already spent the day before grieving and processing and praying about God's timing, God's sovereignty, and we didn't really have any expectations for this appointment because we didn't know what it would all entail. So we just kind of went in with our hands open and maybe ready to see some answers. And I'll save you some of the details of this appointment, but it was absolutely atrocious. We felt like we had no autonomy over the process they were moving forward with. He had asked when the last day of my cycle was, and I had told him that I was supposed to get it that actual week, and that would start the whole process for medications and trials and all the things that would come with infertility. And one of the things that stood out to me in this appointment, among just some other deep heart wounds of going into this, was the fact that Joseph remembered him calling me into the stirrups like a game show host. I had to go in for an actual ultrasound exam, and he just called me down into the stirrups and was like, "All right, Reyna, come on down." And I think I just remember looking over at Joseph with shock and awe and awkwardness on my face, like he really didn't just say that. And then Joseph looked back at me and was like, "Oh, he absolutely did." So if that was any indication of how the appointment went, it was just really rough. Joseph and I both left that appointment, I think, in tears because we didn't have peace about moving forward with the process that he was trying to move us through, as well as just, I think, trying to grieve the fact that we had a negative pregnancy test and we still didn't really have answers and we didn't really know where to go from here, except the fact that we wanted to go get smoothies. So we went to go get smoothies. We're headed home from getting our smoothies, and we're both kind of just numb at this point when I get a call from the infertility clinic, and I panic. So I pick up, and she's like, "Hey, Miss Wilson, your blood work came back." I was like, "Okay." And she's like, "You're already pregnant." And it took all of me not to explode because I was absolutely shocked. I mean, I had spent months looking at cute Pinterest announcements for your spouse while he was gone for training. I was shocked, and I had to pull myself together in those 15 seconds because she was like, "We need you to come back in 2 more days because we need to check your HCG levels." And I was like, okay, not knowing what any of this meant. And I just had to play it cool, hung up the phone, and Joseph was like, "What was that?" And I said, it was just the infertility clinic. Something went wrong with my labs, so we need to come back in 2 more days. And at that point, we're like down the street from our house, and I am trying not to implode because I'm freaking out. And unfortunately, if you know me, I wear my emotions on my face, on my sleeve. So I was really trying to play it cool because I had spent months, y'all, looking into cute pregnancy announcements, and the fact that I was trying to wrestle with this joy and unmanaged expectations and fear and everything that comes with finding out you're having a baby when you were told you're not having a baby. So Joseph went inside, took our dog out at the time, and then I immediately ran upstairs and took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. And that, for me, I think was the sweetest entrance into motherhood, because the night before, I just remember like sitting on the bathroom floor and weeping and like laying it down at the foot of the cross and asking God for the confidence to trust him in not knowing when the baby would come, and then to go upstairs and have that same moment in the bathroom by myself with the Lord and process the fact that I was going to be a mom. So I had my minute, collected myself as best I could, and I remember running downstairs, and I think I grabbed a bean, like a little black bean from our cabinet, and Joseph was coming in with our dog, and of course, he looked one look at my face and he's like, "What's going on?" And I just like put the bean in his hand, and he's like, "What?" And at this point, it wasn't going to be cute anymore because I was starting to cry. And so I like showed him the pregnancy test, and I was like, "We're pregnant." And we both just had our moment. And I told him everything that the doctor had said when we called. And it was truly the sweetest, best surprise to our little bean that was going to join our family. And although I will say it was a surprise to us in the exact circumstance that we were walking into, it was not something that I was expecting other people to ask us when we announced that we were pregnant, if it was a surprise. And I say that because that was one of the things I think that had me encouraged to have this conversation for this episode, was like, what were some of the best and worst things that you've heard about motherhood, parenting, all of those things? Because I really wasn't prepared to share this exciting new joy with, our family and friends, and post it on Facebook to see just like awkward messages from people that I hadn't talked to that were like, "Oh, were you trying? Was this a surprise?" Kind of with that, like, not condescending tone, but it's like that negative connotation, especially as young parents. We were only, I think, 23, 24 at this point. So that's kind of what started this conversation. Was I definitely had a beautiful entrance into motherhood, and I know that everybody's is not that way. But to start off and dive into what are the best and worst things that you heard walking into motherhood, it all started for me with that one Facebook comment about Ledger being a surprise, because here it is. He was absolutely a surprise in the best ways and not the way that we were expecting. So let's go ahead and dive into all of the things that you guys shared about wisdom and learning in motherhood in the best and worst ways. Unfortunately, we didn't have very many submissions when it came to like the worst sides of motherhood and the worst advice. One of the things I will agree with, one of my friends sent in, she was talking about just the cry it out method. She was told to let your baby cry it out and they'll be fine, when in reality they will not be fine. And I love what she said about this as well. It's like, and neither will I. Like, I will not be okay either. Which is also interesting because this theme came up in another conversation with my friend Becca about her experience with her entrance into motherhood with her first, and how sleep training was such a major thing that her mom had like expressed was a must do, the right way, kind of the, epitome of how to get your baby to sleep, right? Which we'll have an episode on that coming up soon, which I think will be helpful. But all that to say, Becca also pointed out that she found so much more intuition as she had more babies and just like leaned into what was best for her family versus what is the quote right way to do things in motherhood. which is actually exactly what my friend Katie sent in, that there are a lot of right ways to do things. You just have to figure out what is best for you and your family. And I think it all ties into intuition. That was a common theme that we had in our submissions. Gabby said, your intuition is always better than a doctor or the CDC or research. And we had other mamas that sent in that we can just lean into that intuition because we get to be the deciding factor for our family. We also have to remember that we don't have to be perfect, that there is more and more and more than enough grace for all of us as we're trying to all navigate this. These were all so helpful because I think we often forget about our mama gut in so many circumstances because it's, we're scrolling on social media, we're talking to other mama friends, we have our parents, we have our friends, we have watching people parent a certain way in any of these areas. And it was just so sweet to have the reminder and conversation with so many of you guys in our community that having the confidence to lean back on your intuition will be the one way that you can really thrive in motherhood. Because at the end of the day, Karen on Instagram is not the mama to your babies. You are the mama to your babies. And God is going to be able to work and speak and live and love through you in the best way that your babies need. Some of the other submissions that came in were about discipline or peace or like finding ways to love yourself. And I loved each and every one of these. Jackie said, follow through on your word, on the happy and the hard, on rewards and punishment, which I can totally agree in the midst of toddlerdom right now and navigating how to discipline with toddlers for Ledger. That has been so helpful to just be patient and kind and just follow through. Bree also said, make sure that you choose one thing to focus on each day and give yourself grace for the rest. Each day you can choose something new, which is so helpful when it comes to the woes and valleys in motherhood, in the discipline, in the dishes, in the laundry, and finding rest in the midst of balancing everything else that motherhood requires of you. And this is a slight pivot into some of the best advice for motherhood, specifically speaking to postpartum, and I'm so glad that we were able to highlight this. One of our submissions was, please take it slow after babies. There is no need to, quote, bounce back. Your body isn't broken after having a baby. Let me just repeat that again. Your body is not broken after having babies. It is a beautiful miracle that you got to be a part of, and the reward is your children. Besides, inherent value doesn't come from how our bodies look on the outside. And she also added a couple scripture references, I think, that speak to this beautifully, so I'll go ahead and touch on those. In 1 Samuel, we're reminded that the Lord does not look at the things that people look at. The Lord doesn't see us the way that we judge ourselves on social media. The Lord looks at our heart. One of my favorite passages is Matthew 6, and I won't read the whole thing, but I will highlight the section that talks about not to worry, which I think is unfortunately all too common first gut response in motherhood, especially as your babies get older. So I'll go ahead and read that over both of us. I definitely need it for my own heart right now, and maybe you do too in this season. So we'll start at verse 25. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is the life not more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Verse 28. And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? What shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And what that passage reminds me in so many moments is that I don't have to pursue perfection. And we've already talked about that. There is an abundance of grace in motherhood, in parenting, in pregnancy, and postpartum that I think we are all too easily dismissed because we think we have to pursue perfection. At least for me, I catch myself in those exact questions. What are we going to eat? What are we going to wear? What are we going to do? Because I'm comparing it to my friends that are mothers or these other mothers on Instagram because their house looks perfect and their nutrition looks perfect and they're spending 1,000 hours outside. When in reality, I'm not going to find peace if I'm pursuing all of those things outside of just pursuing Jesus. So I have one more kind of tangible tip from a mama much wiser than I that kind of goes hand in hand with reminding ourselves as mothers of some of these truths and laying them down at the foot of the cross, as well as just having a little bit of fun and enjoying the sweet parts of motherhood. And the way that I am trying to be a little bit more intentional about this is creating like a prayer journal. And I learned this from a mama in my last ministry position. She created these journals for her kids that people added to every year on their birthday. And it was just these journals of prayers or reminders or encouragements from people that love them in their life. And so I started creating one for Ledger before he was born. And I prayed over him. I told him what I was thinking while I was in the last woes of pregnancy. And I've tried, not completely successfully, but I've tried to stay on track the past 3 years around his birthday month to add a journal entry for myself, for him, and then pass it along to friends and family members in his life that can speak to that age and like that season of life that I was doing with them. And I thought this was just such a sweet, tangible way to, first of all, remind ourselves as mothers to like pray and abide in what we know is true, alongside creating something special for our kids that, like, on their 18th birthday, you present them with this journal that they get to see how many people love them and how you've spoken truth over them and encouraged them and just have written to them in the moments of their life where they didn't understand all that motherhood took from you and requires of you. And I have just loved this practice for myself, as well as just creating these tangible letters for my son. And this episode, I think, for the longest time that I was just dreaming about it, was going to be titled A Letter to You Now and Always for my son, and just wrapping up close to his 3rd birthday, that I want you to know, if you ever listen to these far off in the future and this podcast is still around, that I love you. And I am so thankful that the Lord gave us you as the most beautiful surprise. You are a gift. You are a joy. You sanctify me in ways that I was not ready or prepared for, but it's been the most beautiful unraveling to be able to walk with you and watch you grow and watch the Lord grow me alongside you. My love, I love you, and I don't know how else to tell you, and I won't ever have the words to completely convey all that that means. And I can't wait to see all the things that God is going to do in and through you. So I love you, Bubba. I love you forever. I love you always. And I hope this episode was encouragement for mamas everywhere. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thank you for listening, friend. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you don't want to miss any wisdom or encouragement, be sure to subscribe to the show. And don't forget to rate and review. Your feedback means so much and helps our community grow. If you're looking for more wellness wisdom and free resources, head over to livingwiselywell.com or get connected with me on Instagram at wiselywell. And if you're looking for a break from the hurried health lifestyle, check out my Return to Rest resource for tangible ways to slow down and finally find rest.